Terrans managed to clear their main continent, sending off a big force of, and they also get rid of the last soldier that the Siggies have on their continent. This may mean the end of continents for the Siggies, at least until they fully exploit the naval side of things. They may abandon this. Right now they've got a garrison there that's pretty strong, and they may, the question is whether or not they want to maintain it. It doesn't cost anything to maintain as it would in Conquistador, but it is a piece that might be necessary in what could develop into a naval war. Over here we can see the Terrans are beginning to bring some troops into play to face the Siggies there. This will be an easy continent to fully garrison. They just have to put a unit in 3 spaces, and there will be no Siggies. How worthwhile is that? Yeah, that's probably more valuable. The problem with this one is this one has a lot of valuable territory in terms of the farms, which are kind of cool. And of course, if you build a spaceport and then lose it in a battle, and this one's kind of the least valuable port that the Siggies have. I'm sorry, yeah, that the Siggies have. That's a way to get another spaceport. You have a limited counter mix of these. And it might be worthwhile to lose that one so that I have 5 seaports that I can build, or a mountain port somewhere, although that becomes more questionable because you do have to kind of defend that. This is a nice location because it's fully defensible, so that's also of interest there. All right, on to the Siggy. Okay, and I am indeed abandoning that. If the Terrans want to wipe that out, hey, fine, whatever. I've got other things to do, like pulling in another 100 victory points here. Now, most of those victory points are getting spent on new units, and you can see I'm sending a couple of turtles out to launch a threat, at least, on the Terran forces. Now, the Terrans don't have enough subs to really counter that yet, but they may very shortly. And then we roll around so we can see where we're getting. But, you know, it's getting to the point where I think I'm going to need to build another Siggy ship just to haul the ore up. Of course, I can use that ship to also deliver more crap down onto the field so that I can, you know, try to dominate the terrain, especially the underwater terrain. But unlike the Terrans, I'm having an excess that I can't ship down right now. Now, if I build another ship, that will reverse. Eventually, I'll come to the point where I can't ship countermix down anymore. I may have to go to the Capellans and stuff like that. And they're just really, it snowballs into a situation where there is no way out of, no way of moving forward for the Terrans. It's beginning to look like I'll play some more. There's no worries there, but it seems pretty predetermined at this point. While I was looking at Board Game Geek, I looked over the FGU site and I realized I have a couple of games, at least, of theirs that I didn't mention. And they're such a small company in terms of board games. They have like 4 pages of games, which isn't tiny, but that I thought I should point them out. One is Gladiators, which was really lousy little hand-to-hand combat. I think Arena of Death by SPI did it better, and damn the guy who took it. I've inherited games. I was gone for the summer without any knowledge that I'd be back when it disappeared, but anyway. The other is, I also know who did it, but the other is, I have a photocopy of the rules for Heart of Oak, which was a mini system for naval combat, which was kind of cool. We used it in our sort of Lace Wars campaign. Lace Wars? Yeah, I guess it can be called that. We did a minis Age of Reason in a fantasy world, and I was a naval power, so I had to really get into the Heart of Oak rules. I had no minis for anything, for the boats, for the armies, for anything. And I don't think I ever got in a battle that was with my own troops, although I was getting close to coming to war. Okay, bad weather up in the Terran sector again. Grounds all the air cars, prevents an attack on these. What did we do? We finished off the Siggy's city, their initial city. In a sense, forcing the planes build of the first spaceport. That's sort of an attempt to try to level the game a little bit, but as you can see, the Siggy's advantages at sea and the advantages to being at sea overall, I think, are telling. Among other things, the weather doesn't come into effect, right? For the Terrans, landing more forces here because I can't land onto here. Beginning to increase this colony, and I've got more colonists coming to fill it out. I've got a lot of sea area production available, but I've got to fill it out, and that's going to be a problem, especially if the Siggy's start attacking, as it looks like they're about to do. Not much I could do here. Farmers stuck producing too little. No ability. Oh, wait a minute. I could have moved these. One. See, here's the problem. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I could get them out at sea, but they aren't going to do anything. But I could actually have moved them here. Picked them up, moved them there, did the farming. That'll get me closer to where I want to go with them. It's very, very difficult to shift things across that, air mobile side that the Terrans have to the naval that the submarines provide, whereas the colonists from the Siggy's have only one way to be transported, really, other than by spaceship, which is with the turtles, and the turtles can go anywhere. So therefore, they're a lot more flexible at pulling things off the continents. On to the Siggy's then. Without a base down in this area, it's a long trek over to project any kind of threat against the Terrans. So, I'm landing a lot of forces, but the problem is whatever I put on land to farm or mine or whatever is going to be possibly threatened by natives. Now, this is a safe place. Over here, I had to move a turtle there to help protect it from the natives that are showing up over there. I'm using land spots as way spaces, as way stations to create a little bit of farming income as I make my way down to these and set them up. My overall production is tremendous, but I'm not really being able to ship much of it back because I used my dome ship in support of my expansion in this direction. I think that ore is pretty safe out at sea. I don't see the Terrans being able to strike it, so it's not too bad. It's just I was only able to pull some 18 ore or whatever, getting my victory points in the 30s there. Again, I think it's over, but we can play a little bit more, see what we're seeing develop out. I just don't see how the Terrans can fight against the Siggy's in the water. These two are worth 20. The entire Terran Navy is worth less than that. And I can throw essentially slowly reserves forward at a faster rate than the Terrans can improve them. Eventually it'll get to the point where I can build all these bugs and I can build the Capellans and stuff and start taking land territory and making that harder on the Terrans too, and just really knocking them into the position where they aren't able to produce anymore. I want to use one of these to shake things up, but the cost of doing so seems so high that it's tough to make that choice. Some of the bad weather's in the Siggy home area, but that doesn't matter so much. We're all underwater now over there. It does mean no liftoffs and takeoffs of the spaceships, though, in the key areas where all my bases are. So, no Siggy money's going up this turn. And we're a little short. Could mean something. For the Terrans, finally got our base here built, and we're kind of pursuing the natives. just to keep them off of our ass. But that's an expense, you know. Every time you fight the natives, you take costs. The native attack here, I lost 3 of my peacekeepers. That's $27 I just lost. How much is this thing worth? It produces $10 a turn, but you know, if every 3 turns I'm having to lose, you know, $27 of production, I can't afford, you know, that's not a sustainable margin that compared to what I can make off the undersea areas. It means that I'm putting a huge investment in on some of my lower payoffs, which is really why the Siggies gave up their own land colony. Again, a factor where some of the decisions, for example, populating the land areas, don't end up paying off as well as other decisions. So the whole nature of the game, you know, there's always going to be bad decisions in a game. I feel like this one doesn't have very many different good choices for your overall production strategy, and especially when the very nature of the game, the asymmetry of the game, is based on the land versus sea capabilities of the 2 powers. Not that the Siggies are terrible at land, but they're better at sea by far, so that's where they'll probably end up competing. Well, when one of the choices that seems to favor one of the sides is significantly inferior, that does cause a serious problem, because as you can see, the Terrans are being forced to follow the strategy that the Siggies are better at. And the weather throws a hamper in the Siggies' plans. Not as bad as when the Terrans have theirs, but oops, I forgot. Let me flee back here and get a. I'm always forgetting my natives. I get 2 natives. I think I'm better off placing them down here. Because they're able to, you know, use their turtles underwater, just like the submarines, in order to shift some forces. They're finding themselves having to use way stations, little farming locales. There's a little bit of a risk, you know. I mean, I'm within range of some natives here, but I've got enough strength that the natives aren't going to attack. The biggest hindrance of all is not being able to ship all the ore up. I've got 3 ships. Two would have been lifting off. If I did that right, I'd be pulling in 200 victory points this turn. Very quickly going to make the 1,000 doing that, assuming that I don't spend it all, as I've been doing, on fighting the Terrans. Maintaining simply a defensive value would be enough to win the game, matching the Terran costs, etc. But instead, I believe in that it's safer to try to dominate things. I don't know. Anyway, I think I moved this. It doesn't really make a difference. It's just for me keeping track of how long the game usually lasts. And it usually doesn't take 12 turns to be obvious which side is going to have the advantage. Alright, so the Terrans continue their expansion, moving some air cars into place that can start disrupting some of the Siggy travel that's going here. These air cars are within striking range, and they actually have some peacekeepers that they transported as well. One problem I'm running into with the Terrans, they're allied natives. They've got so many on this continent that's now they've won on, that they don't have enough force on this continent to really push the issue as much as they like to. But they could make a supported attack here, perhaps. I don't know. Building up a second naval platform now, spaceport. My thinking on the spaceports is that for the spaceship to be able to launch properly, and this may be incorrect thinking, it's going to need some sort of presence above the sea. And in fact, the rules allow you to stage the fighter aircraft, the airplanes, off of any spaceport, which is important. So it seems clear to me that it would make sense that peacekeepers could jump off a spaceport station and fly using their jetpacks. There's no specified rule on that. You kind of have to use your logic and intuition in a game like this in a lot of ways. Farming monies come in, and then we also are getting our mining capital. So, you know, in terms of capital available, it's pretty close. The problem is the Siggies have a lot in reserve that they haven't been able to pull up effectively. So they're going to get a huge burst of money at the end of this turn. So they can afford maybe to build another spaceship because they're having so much trouble pulling the money up at a high enough rate. I think that's about it there. The defensive positionings up here are providing enough of a threat that you can see the turtles have been pushed to help defend against that. We've got Siggies running around, try to establish an advanced base here. One interesting factor, I actually started building some Capellan air cars. That's going to enable me to fly settlers more quickly. Now, that's kind of going to be a slow process because I can fly them, say, here where they could farm, or I could fly them to a city where they can do nothing once one gets established here, which is not yet the case by any means. I haven't put my mining goods down yet. But it's not like I can land them and use them immediately in the underwater mines, but that's okay. It'll speed up the process of getting things. I've got a limited number of turtles. Turtles are good combat units, so I've got some of them committed over against the Terrans, essentially. The big pull-up, 200 victory points. Probably going to build another spaceship to be able to ship more of my troops. You know, just to try and get to the point where I can really put the squeeze on the Terrans and make it absolutely obvious. Cleared off of this continent mainly. These natives can go around trying to chase things that are able to run away from them over land at faster speeds or cut across water obstacles, etc. There's not much chance there. The Siggies have pretty much abandoned the idea of having any land territories, primarily because I've only got so many of these spaceports. Now, I do have a whole bunch more colonists, so I could create a bunch of little four-person colonists, and especially for farming, that can pay itself off eventually. But right now, the margins of victory points are coming in much greater from, you know, huge mining cities underwater. That's the best thing. No defense required except against the Terrans, and no immediate access to spaceships. I can pull this stuff in and out of there. Now, a port or some transport capabilities to a port from a continent would be required if I end up putting all my ports out at sea. And that's kind of one of the problems with that. So if you start off at sea, if I allowed, I put a restriction that you could only start off in the plains. If you started off at sea with an initial spaceport, that would have an interesting factor in that it becomes harder to transport your goods to and from valuable regions. So continents tend to have more valuable locations, but of course, you know, we see the expansion into these. It's just one type of victory point. It's not like you have some farming requirement. It's just farming gives you more additional victory points of that type. So kind of spreading out on your way to places while you're farming. The fact that colonists can't move on their own means that basically it's just as easy, at least for the Siggies, and probably for both, to transit, because the subs would be what you would be relying on at this point, to populate new areas. So the only problem is that areas with any value whatsoever tend to be more spread out at sea. There's clumps, but getting between those clumps is often long distances, whereas in the terrain, in the land terrain, there's lots of plains. Those are all worth something, and then there's a decent number of mines, maybe a little bit more than at sea, but not by much. And those, again, are all worth something. There's a smaller number of mountain mines, though, and those are the only ones that are worth the same as the sea mines. Well, this may be a matter of hope springing eternal or something, but these guys can't really interfere with the air cars. There were some ground troops, so there was a possibility of an engagement on the land here, and the air cars would be included in it. But the air cars can sail in and they can deal with this city. Now, how good an attack they can make is limited. This peninsula and this coastal city is one of the few places where you could actually use ground type troops to make an attack, and there are some actual ground troops in there, on a location that's in the ocean. But then I started to realize, the Sigi position is very spread out and potentially can be attacked and picked off in certain areas. So if the air-capable and more mobile power that the Terrans have can be used, and obviously the Capellans are more mobile than the Terrans even, in terms of their air cars and in terms of these suckers, which only really have a range of 6. You have to have your base within 6 of them. There might be a chance for the Terrans to take a military attack here. And they've got enough production that they can put out some degree of military force. It's kind of a scary situation for the Sigis, where I think they are going to at least face some sort of challenge here. I think they'll overcome it. As I said, I suspect it's a matter of optimism more than anything else. But I've never really gotten this far. I've usually gotten to the point where one side or the other is out producing, and it just looks hopeless, and I walk away. Well, I'm beginning to say, geez, maybe I shouldn't walk away. Maybe there is some chance for the underdog type victory. We've still got some farming going on. Limited defenses for this. I'm kind of worried about the possibility because there's a lot of Sigi aligned natives there available. And of course, if this fails, I can turn back against this, which still has a presence by the Terrans. That allows them to have a more compact location, more compact production area, which may be their big advantage, that they can pick off some Sigi territories, say near the edge here, up here where they've got nothing nearby, but you'd really be telegraphing a move. But the problem with even picking off something like this, I can do it with, the air cars are relatively fast, I can get close with them, I can make an attack. If I have, well, it looks like the best I can do if I'm using air cars is 1-to-1. If I use, that's the best I'm going to be able to do across the board. But I have a chance of wiping out an entire spaceport that way. And a spaceport's an expensive thing to construct, at least in terms of effort, if not points. It's only 25 points to build. I may lose more than that in the assault. But, being able to pick off stuff like that, yet defend my own core, might be the edge that I need there. Maybe start taking some chances on those event rolls. I'm scared of them, though. They're so expensive for what they generally provide. Anyway, on to the Sigis. Yes, it's just pure optimism. The Sigis were very easily able to handle one of the stacks of air cars here that was potentially a threat by throwing their turtles in that direction. You can see them expanding here. Undefended, Terrans might be able to knock that out. And, provide a hitch in the Sigi expansion level. But that might also expose some of their subs to an attack by turtles that come down. The real problem for the Sigis is really countermix. And they're beginning to go around that saying, hey, if you're going to play around in the world where, there's land units, I'm throwing, and this is a stack full of fighter little warrior bugs, which can fly off there and start combating through here. They're not terribly fast. The Terrans can easily run away from them. A military force isn't endangered. Forgot that again. I haven't put down my mining yet. I always am forgetting to do so. And often I catch it at the beginning of my turn. Probably sometimes I don't. But another 100 pulled in, pretty much paid for a huge expenditure of new colonists opening up another city soon, and these warriors. I just don't see, the Terrans can't keep up with the production that the cities have at this point. But that's okay. Every time I look at the events charts, I try to convince myself and eventually manage to, hey, maybe there's, a good deal in here that I can get across. I convince myself otherwise afterwards. Let's take a quick look at what some of our events might be that we could get. So, the first is diplomatic events that are listed here, and basically, build or not being allowed to build Capellans by either player. That might be an edge for the Terrans to get that result. They can't direct towards that, and the best they can do is get one die roll per turn on these charts. A truce, well, that's not what we want. The Siggies will win the truce. They're producing more. In fact, they might be spending to try to prevent some of these effects. Concessions is more victory points. You get a good payoff from that, but it's not enough to catch them up. Better rolls on the natives. Well, everybody's pretty much abandoned land, so the Terrans are sort of on there, but that's not going to do much. Advance in... Okay, so these are the technological ones. Advance in mining, farming. These give you better production capabilities. If you get these early in the game, they're good. Likewise with the weapons and processing, well, processing is going to give you more victory points. The weapons and machinery allow you to build things more cheaply. We saw we got the cheapened subs. We could keep getting reduced costs. The problem is at this point where we're actually locked in the possible struggle, spending most of my victory points for a turn on a roll on there seems kind of dangerous. I think that's what I'm going to do, because I need something, but I think that's going to ruin... I think that's going to spell the end of the game for me, to spend that 30 points. Okay, so now these become the freebies, and maybe I should have been rolling on these more often. These are a mixed bag. You get bad events and good events from here. Some of the others may not particularly favor you terribly, but at least you don't get anything terrible from them. So this one, for example, will give you 30 victory points worth of equipment other than colonists, workers, fighters, or air cars. So, for no money, I could get a bonus. This may be what maybe I'll go for this. We get some free colonists or workers. Taxation increasing and decreasing. This just changes the amount of victory points that we get at this point. And that's kind of nice for a 0. Population decrease prevents me from building colonists. Population sentiment against Colony Delta. I can't build anything. Those can also spell the end. At least they're not costing anything. So I think I'm gonna roll on that, actually, the political table, because it doesn't cost me the 30 bucks that the technological does. And if I get a lucky string of those, I might be able to do something. I don't think I rolled weather yet. Yeah, crap. That's one factor. I'm affected by weather more than the Siggies are. Okay, so political, I got me a 4. That's an M, which is taxes decreased. And then I have to look up, I lose 10 bucks. I'm not going to give up quite yet, but I'm getting pretty close. Okay, Terrans pull in, some 56 points of mining money this time. In addition, they've got their kind of slow trickle of farming money. That's 1024, I think. So they're getting about half their money from mining. And pushing forward to expand. They've got a third city built here. They've filled that out. They got some troops into place, took an exchange. Not a great solution. Over here, they flew their air cars out of the range of those turtles. Those turtles are going to have a hard time crossing the continent. They basically have to sail around at sea. But, you know, just not seeing where I'm going to be able to get a real grip. So, like, here there's a potential that I might be able to launch an attack if I devote most of my strength that way. But if I do, there's the potential of a threat by the Siggies against my real core areas. And, you know, overall, I'm just not going to be able to replace my costs. If there's no war, the Siggies win. If there's a war, there are other, you know, I think I will lose that war. So, it kind of looks up. Now the Siggies have maxed out their dome craft. They've got 2 going each turn. Eventually, that'll be almost entirely pulling money up. But right now, we're still dropping colonists. Well, probably maybe not eventually, because there's always places where you can get some marginal rate of increase, I suppose. You know, like putting 4 colonists there, starting to produce a war. But as it stands, we're actually producing, I think, more than we spent. And we spent a lot this turn, dropping some Capellan with air cars here, just to give us a better mix of units so we can face the Terrans more. But the problem is, like, where we've got 3 air cars here, these guys are probably toast because the Terrans outgunned them. But maybe I'll cost the Terrans some extra units that way, and thereby cost them some more points. As I just keep bringing the noose tighter and tighter. All I've got is military units. Actually, I got a farmer here, but on the landmass for the most part. So I'm pretty much invulnerable to what they can do. I'm positioning myself with stuff here so that I can, you know, have a base of operations to drop stuff in. The problem there? Well, there's not a lot I can do about, any more than the Terrans can, about their undersea factories. The only thing I've got that works against them is my turtles. And eventually I think it'll come down to starting to blow these things up with my turtles. I'm almost at the limit of my spaceports. Once I build this one, I think I am at that limit. Or maybe this one. And then it kind of becomes, well, now what? You know, defend what I got and try to make a race for it. I'm going to call it here. I don't see a lot of point to playing it out once it gets to this this stage. It looks pretty clear to me the Terrans are not going to be able to catch up, but the nature of this game means you're not going to wipe them out. Now, to some extent, I think that's kind of clever that they set it up in a way that you really can't take the enemy completely out. The enemy will always have some ability to project some force on the continent, but when it comes down to it, it becomes obvious who's going to win, who's going to reach that 1,000 points before the other guy does. And then, well, there you have it. You know, that's going to be the game. Do I want to play that all out? Well, I'm taking a fairly conflict-oriented view of how that battle is going to progress. And that's going to make it a lot longer. As long as the Siggies have to keep producing lots and lots of troops, because the Terrans are spending every penny they have on building a military force and trying to contest that victory. Well, and I think that's how it's going to go, no matter what, if people are playing competitively. If you're not going to resign, you should compete as much as you can, right? Well, as far as I see, the only way to compete as much as you can is to keep producing military forces and try to pick things off. But it just becomes kind of a pointless exercise. I don't mind that when I'm looking at a historical battle or something where there's, you know, some context that I can look at it in. But here, this is all there is to the game. I don't have some context to put it in. Well, if the Terrans win this battle, you know, heavily, if they're able to completely wipe, or if the Sigmas win heavily, if they're able to completely wipe the Terrans out, that really affects my image of some campaign that's going on. It doesn't. There's no real storyline, and there's nothing to base it off of. So it comes down to a competitive game, and I don't really know what else to say. The Siggies won. that's apparent, and it's going to take a long time to play it out, and not be terribly interested. It's going to be this rear guard action by the Terrans as they try to do sabotaging type actions, as they maybe roll on here hoping to get some kind of event that, you know, makes it just a little better for a little while. But it's not like you can, you know, at this point, for example, say, okay, let's switch to high tech, you know, we'll make lots of tech rolls and maybe we'll catch up and be able to cause problems. The tech isn't that valuable. It can be very valuable, I suppose, if you start it early enough in the game that it snowballs to the point where there's kind of this tipping point. But there isn't going to be that tipping point in this game. It's gone too far. Anyway, I'll send this one up, come back with an overall review.